Ezavier Crowell commits to Alabama, and Texas is still without a running back for the class of 2026. What do the Longhorns do now? We'll talk about it on today's episode of Locked On Longhorns. Intro.
You are Locked On Longhorns, your daily podcast on the Texas Longhorns. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome in. You were locked on to the Texas Longhorns. I'm your host, BK Brad Kellner, Texas grad, Austin local, and longtime sports radio host here in the Lone Star State. Thank you for making Locked On Longhorns a part of your day every single day. We're free and available wherever you get your podcast and on YouTube as well. Please like, subscribe, leave a comment, and tell your Longhorn friends about Locked On, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. We'll talk about the best and worst case scenarios for Texas in 2025. We'll also get to a little Texas baseball portal news later in the show. But first, a little recruiting conversation. Last night, four-star running back Ezavier Crowell committed to Alabama. No surprise, he's from Alabama. Grew up an Alabama fan. He's got family ties to the university. And once he committed, he actually told a local TV station in Alabama, quote, "Alabama was the dream. Ever since I was a kid, it was my dream to go to Alabama. Roll Tide," end quote. Texas tried hard, but unfortunately it was to no avail. So we talked about Alabama being the leader in the clubhouse for this recruitment. We had hoped that Texas had done enough. They got Crowell on campus for a visit earlier this month. We were hoping that maybe there was a chance Texas was able to go to convince Crowell to leave the state and come to Austin. But unfortunately, at least as of this moment, that's not the case. So what's next? Well, speaking of this moment, at this moment, there are 0 uncommitted running backs that have been offered by Texas in the class of 2026. The Longhorns had 3 big targets this summer, and they swung and missed on all 3 of them. KJ Edwards committed to A&M before even coming to Austin on an official visit. Derek Cooper, the 5-star from the state of Florida, never visited campus, and now Crowell is Bama bound. At least that's where things stand as of right now. So what will Texas do? Real quick, I don't know if this is worth mentioning, but I'm going to mention it anyways. How's that for a tease? I did see a picture of Derek Cooper rocking Texas gear at a camp earlier this week, which was interesting. He commits 2 weeks from now. He didn't take an official to Texas this summer, so I don't really think the Longhorns have a chance, but maybe he saw other guys commit elsewhere, and he was advertising his services a little bit. Like, hey, Texas, I know you missed out on Edward. I know you missed out on Crowell. If you up the NIL offer a little bit, maybe I'll listen to what you guys have to say. Or maybe he's telling, Florida and Miami and some of the other schools that he's interested in that, hey, I could consider Texas if you guys don't pony up a little bit more. Who knows? Figured I'd mention that. Again, when you don't get an official this late in the cycle and within just a few weeks of a guy committing, it's usually not a good sign for your school. But I found that relatively interesting and worth bringing up that Derek Cooper was rocking Texas gear. So point is, Texas swung and missed at its 3 biggest running back targets for the summer. Now, I think everything's going to be fine. I expect Texas to figure out this running back situation eventually. I always bring this up. Go back to the 2025 cycle and take a look at the defensive line position. At this time last year, Texas had 0 defensive linemen committed in the class. At the end of June, and it's like, what are we going to do at defensive line? And it was a similar situation. You had a new position coach, Kenny Baker replacing Bo Davis. This year, obviously, at running back, it's Chad Scott replacing Tashard Choice. Last year, things looked pretty bleak for Texas on the D-line. And then, boom, in the last 4 months of the cycle, the Longhorns added all 3 of their 4- and 5-star commits. So since we're in June, we still have more than 5 months before pen hits paper, which is plenty of time for the staff to figure things out in regard to running back recruiting. My screen just went black for a moment or two. Hopefully, y'all didn't see that. Hopefully, we're still recording right now and everything is all good. So, plenty of time for Texas to figure some things out. But let's bring up some names, some potential candidates for Texas. Again, they're not going to stop recruiting Ezavier Crowell. They're not going to stop recruiting KJ Edwards. Maybe they don't stop with Derek Cooper either. So it's worth still mentioning those names. But a few other names that we haven't talked about in a while. A couple of flip candidates. How about Javian Osborne from Forney, Texas? Current Notre Dame commit. Texas was in on Javian Osborne early, and then Tashard Choice left for the Lions. Again, whenever you have a coaching change mid-cycle, it's going to impact recruiting. And Tashard Choice was one of the best running back coaches in America. He was a tremendous recruiter who did a fantastic job cultivating relationships with recruits all across the country. That's obvious when you look at how good Texas has recruited running backs in recent years. When Tashard Choice left, that kind of upset the apple cart a little bit. And in Javian Osborne's case, he kind of stopped looking at Texas. And this went from, Texas, Notre Dame, Michigan to just a Notre Dame, Michigan battle. And ultimately, Notre Dame won out, and the Fighting Irish were able to get his commitment. Now, Javian Osborne has been to Texas multiple times. So at one point he was interested, but it's been a while since he's visited Austin. And again, the official visit period is coming to an end. So we'll see. Could Texas get a flip? I don't know. An in-state kid. Maybe Texas pushes more of its chips to the center of the table with Javian Osborne now that they missed on those other targets. That's a name to keep in mind. Tredarian Ball, at current Oregon commit. Another guy that was in on Texas, but lost interest after Tashard Choice left for the Detroit Lions. Ball, an Oregon commit, another in-state kid. He grew up a big Texas fan. Maybe that helps, but he hasn't been to UT's campus in more than a year. And Ball was never offered by Chad Scott when Scott was the running backs coach at West Virginia. So Chad Scott didn't have much of a relationship with Ball when he committed to Oregon. Javian Osborne was offered by West Virginia. So Chad Scott had at least talked to Osborne a couple of times. I don't know if the Mountaineers were ever really in consideration, but there was at least a pre-existing relationship between those two when Scott took the gig in Austin. With Ball, I don't think that's the case. So it might be even harder for Texas to get a flip there. And Oregon does a pretty good job with its NIL packages, and they do a pretty good job of not losing kids to flips. I know every Texas fan was hoping Corian Moore would be a last-minute flip from Oregon to Texas. It never happened. So uphill battles for both of those guys. Not only are they committed elsewhere, but they're committed to some big-time programs that have some money to spend, especially Oregon. So those are two names, 4-star guys that some of you already know that maybe the Longhorns, again, try harder now to go after and see if they can get flips. But there are other candidates that are out there. Isaiah Lee from Lancaster. He is a current Vanderbilt commit. That's a guy without a Texas offer. If Texas offers, you wonder if maybe he changes his mind and he wants to play closer to home at the flagship university of the state of Texas. These next few guys are all guys that don't currently hold Texas offers. Ball and Osborne do. The rest of these names that we're about to mention are in-state kids for the class of 2026 that don't currently hold Texas offers. And you wonder, okay, with the way things have broken recently, maybe offers could be coming their way. Mentioned Isaiah Lee, Christian Rhodes from Lake Highlands up in Richardson. He's a current SMU commit. Could he consider Texas if Texas offered? Carday Mack from Atascocita and Humble down towards Houston. He's an Arizona State commit. Would he think about Texas if an offer came his way? Jet Walker, current West Virginia commit, committed to the Mountaineers when Chad Scott was the running back coach there. He plays his high school ball at Georgetown right here in Central Texas. That's another name. Ryan Estrada, currently committed to Minnesota, plays at El Dorado High School. And then Jamal Charles's cousin is also a running back in this class. Amonte Martin from Port Arthur Memorial. He's not committed anywhere right now. Another 3-star without a Texas offer as of June 27th. So I bring up all of those names to tell you the Longhorns have options. They can offer any one of those guys right now, or they can wait and see how their senior years of high school play out. Again, National Signing Day, not until early December. they can say, you know what, we're interested in a couple of those guys, but let's see how they do in their final year of high school football. And if they get off to a great start and they look like they've taken a step from the last time we've seen them, then boom, an offer can come and maybe you can get a late commit. So those are just a few names. I think, 8, 6, 7, 8 names that I just mentioned right there that could be on the Longhorns' radar moving forward. And there's a few more out there as well. So here's the good news as we wrap up this segment. I feel like I'm kind of all over the place here. My bad on that. The good news is you can flip guys. Nobody's put pen to paper yet. Texas has had success with flips in the past. They will have success with flips in the future. If the Longhorns are having a great year and let's say A&M's not, KJ Edwards could flip. If Kalen DeBoer looks in over his head at Alabama, maybe EJ Crowell flips. Maybe Derek Cooper flips. Who knows? There are flip options out there. We've got a ways to go before signing day. Other good news, Texas's running back room is fully stocked. We touched on this earlier in the week. The Longhorns have signed 2 running backs in each of the last 3 classes. Baxter and Wisner in 23, Gibson and Clark in 24, Simon and Stewart in 2025. All of those guys are talented. All of those guys have multiple years of eligibility remaining. So even if Texas doesn't necessarily hit on running back in this cycle, they're not screwed at that position because they've got talent and depth in that room. They've got a few guys who, again, have a few more years of eligibility left. And then, of course, the transfer portal exists too, to where if Texas feels like they need a plug-and-play starter next year or 2 years from now, they can go out in the portal and bring somebody in. The Longhorns have had plenty of success with transfers in recent years. So that's where things stand right now. Unfortunate but expected news in regards to EJ Crowell committing to Alabama. But the good news, there's time, there are options. And again, defensive line. Last year, Texas was in a horrible spot at the end of June. They ended up with one of the best, maybe the best defensive line classes in America for the 25 cycle. Maybe they can make magic happen again in 2026. All right, we'll take your thoughts. Comment below. Where do you think Texas should go? What's your panic level? Are you panicking at all? Would love to hear from y'all. If you're watching on YouTube, leave a comment below. All right, let's shift gears here. Let's talk about the current team. What are the best and worst case scenarios for Longhorn football in 2025? CBS Sports gave their answers to those questions. We'll talk about their answers, and we'll give ours as well coming up next right here on Locked On Longhorns. But first, a word for our friends at Game Time. You ever decide at the last minute that you want to catch a ball game, right? You don't have any plans, some random day in the summer, and you're like, you know what? I would love to catch an MLB game tonight. Well, that's the beauty of Game Time. The easiest way to grab last-minute tickets without the stress of buying last-minute tickets. And Game Time's going to save you a lot of money. So you could spend extra on food, on drinks, on merch. You can even invite more people and pay for tickets because of Game Time and the discounts that you get. Game Time makes buying tickets so simple, even right before first pitch. The best part, prices actually drop the closer you get to first pitch. So you can get last-minute deals. They also show you the exact view from your seat before you purchase your tickets so you know what you're going to walk into. There's no stress. They take all of the stress, the hassle, the haggle out of ticket buying with Game Time. And, of course, it's an app. You use it right from your phone. It's so easy. Here's another best part. 2 best parts. Yeah, it's Friday. You can have multiple best parts. Who cares? You download the Game Time app. You use the promo code LOCKEDONCollege. You're going to get $20 off your first purchase, just like that. Download the Game Time app, use the promo code LOCKEDONCollege, and you're going to get $20 off. Terms apply. Make sure you download the Game Time app. Last-minute tickets, lowest prices, guaranteed. All right, welcome back to Locked On Longhorns, your team every day. CBS Sports published an article earlier this week titled, quote, "Every SEC team's best and worst case scenario in 2025," end quote, where they, laid out every SEC team's best and worst case scenarios in 2025. Crazy concept, right? They're only talking about the regular season here. They're giving record predictions for the regular season. What's best case scenario record? What's worst case scenario record for every SEC team? Since they don't do playoff predictions, we'll give our own on this segment. We're obviously going to focus on the Longhorns, and we'll start with the good because it is Friday after all. Best case scenario for Texas in 2025, according to CBS Sports, about 12-0. Here's the description. Quotes, "The Texas offense gets the accolades, but it's defenders Anthony Hill and Colin Simmons that make this team one of the playoff frontrunners in 2025. the only program in the country with consecutive playoff semifinal appearances. The Longhorns are on the cusp of a national championship under Steve Sarkisian, and this might be the team that gets it done on the big stage. The schedule opens with a bang at Ohio State and features Florida, Oklahoma, and Georgia. End quote. So that is the reasoning. I don't even know if that's really reasoning. That's kind of a description of Texas football and some of the teams that they play this year. But point is, 12-0 feels fair. Texas absolutely has the talent, the coaching, the depth, the everything to win all 12 regular season games on the schedule this season. Now, would everything have to break Texas's way for that to happen? Yeah, of course. But that's what best case scenario means. Best case scenario means, Arch Manning is the real deal, and maybe he's a Heisman finalist at the end of the year. Best case scenario means that there's no big drop-off in offensive line play, even though 4 of the 5 starters from 2024 are now in the NFL. Best case scenario means the run game looks great. C.J. Baxter maybe is the guy that he was before the injury. And your wide receivers and tight ends look really good, and there's no drop-off in production there, even though you lost a lot of talent to the NFL. And the defense looks elite. The secondary doesn't take a step back. Even without Jahdae Barron and Andrew Makuba and losing both secondary coaches, like all of those things, it's sort of all-encompassing. Those things happen. It's best case scenario for Texas, and the Longhorns end up running the table in the regular season. And look, maybe some best case involves other teams struggling. Like maybe Ohio State's not ready to go in week 1. They had more players drafted than Texas did. They've got more guys they need to replace. They've got new coordinators on both sides of the ball as well. Maybe they're not ready to go in week 1 with all of their new faces. Maybe Georgia isn't as good as they've been. There are some folks think this could be a little bit of a down year for Kirby Smart in Athens. I mean, Georgia hasn't lost a home game since 2019. Say that again. Georgia hasn't lost a home game since 2019. So maybe Texas needs Georgia to be a little bit down to go in there and win. Maybe you get some injury luck. Texas stays healthy. Some of the teams on their schedule don't. Who knows? But it's possible. It's definitely a realistic best case scenario. Obviously, every team's best case scenario is running the table. For Arkansas, best case isn't 12-0. It's not going to happen. For Texas, it's 12-0. Is it probable? No. Tough road games. Again, Ohio State, Georgia. You got to go to Florida. You got some other tough teams on your schedule this year. But possible? Absolutely. And if Texas ends the regular season 12-0, they're going to be in the SEC title game. They'll be a lock to make the college football playoff. If they win the conference championship, they will be the number 1 seed in the CFP, regardless of what happens around the country. If they lose the SEC title game after going 12-0, at worst, they'll be a 3 seed. Like that's where they were last year because of the old format. Last year. They were technically the 5 seed when the bracket came out, but Texas was ranked number 3 in the final CFP rankings of the year. And look, they were 11-1 in the regular season last year and lost the conference championship game. If they're 12-0, they're not going to be lower than that. So best case scenario, of course, involves winning in Atlanta and then winning 3 CFP games to bring home a national championship for the first time since 2005. Maybe you build Stark a statue, right? He said if someone's able to go undefeated and win a national championship in this expanded playoff era of college football, coach deserves a statue. Maybe Sark was talking about himself. So there's best case for CBS. And then we added the playoff stuff at the end because that's obviously what we're looking for more than anything else, right? What about the worst case? According to CBS Sports, the realistic worst case scenario for the Longhorns this season is 8-4. Their description, quote, Arch Manning struggling under the pressure or suffering an early season injury might be the only scenarios in which Texas falls out of the AP poll this fall. The Buckeyes could easily take the opener, and road matchups at Florida and Georgia will bring hostile environments, end quote. I agree. Like 8-4 feels like a realistic worst case. I don't think there's anything that happens that would lead this team to 5 or more losses this year. There's just too much talent. Like even if something happens to Arch, loudest knock on wood of all time, Trey Owens or Matthew Caldwell or KJ Lacey, those guys would be fine with all of the talent around them. Of course, it won't be the same. Like Texas isn't winning a national championship if something serious happens to QB1. I think Texas could beat most of the teams on their schedule on just top to bottom talent alone. So, yeah, I mean, that 8-4 feels realistic worst case scenario for me. 8-4 would hurt. Obviously, injuries can get you there. If it's not injury related, then Arch Manning is not the guy that we had hoped, and just kind of the opposite of everything I said before, right? The offensive line misses the 4 guys who left. The wide receivers and tight ends just aren't good enough to hang in the SEC, and the defense takes a big step back. I find that one harder to believe. There's so much back on this defense and that side of the ball, better talent, more depth, more experience. But, it's possible. I guess Texas could take a step back on defense, and they miss some of the guys who are now in the NFL. I feel like, though, if Texas does end up 8-4 or even 9-3, it's going to be more so the offense just had too much to replace and couldn't get it together. How do you get to 8-4? At Ohio State, at Georgia? Those feel like the 2 obvious losses. That Florida game that CBS mentioned, where's the slip up? I think Texas is going to be favored in 10, maybe even 11 of its regular season games this year. So picking them to lose 4 isn't the easiest exercise. Now, God forbid it's OU or A&M, but rivalry games, maybe anything can happen there. Not really the A&M game. We know how that one goes. Maybe at Kentucky, maybe at Mississippi State. 8-4 would suck so bad. With all the hype and a potential number 1 ranking coming, we wouldn't hear the end of it. So let's do the best case thing instead. But I tend to agree. Again, best case scenario, 12-0 for Texas in the regular season. Worst case scenario, you get 8-4. That's nightmare scenario, but I don't think they finish worse than that, and hopefully they're nowhere close to even that. But we'll take your thoughts below. What do you think? Best case, worst case for Texas football in 2025? Comment below. Always love hearing from you. All right, let's shift to the diamond here. We got more good news for Texas baseball. How about 2 more transfer portal additions to talk about, and more love coming to Dylan the Praying Mantis Volantis? We will talk about all of it coming up right here on Locked On Longhorns. All right, final segment of the week here on Locked On Longhorns, your team every day. Some good news for Texas baseball. First of all, shout out to Dylan Volantis. I mean, the accolades just keep coming. Dylan Volantis was named a first-team All-American by D1 Baseball yesterday. Not freshman All-American. No, an All-American All-American. Dylan Volantis, the only freshman on D1 Baseball's first-team All-America squad this year. Yeah. Pretty big deal. 4-1, sub-2 ERA. He led the SEC in ERA, WHIP, batting average against, and saves. Had 12 saves this season, which is the most ever from an SEC freshman. Y'all know most of this stuff already. I mean, Dylan Volantis was damn near unhittable in conference play, and he was a huge part of Texas winning the league in year 1 and being the number 2 overall seed when the NCAA tournament started. So, tip of the cap to Dylan Volantis. It's awesome that we've got this dude around Austin for 2 more years. Excited to see what he does for an encore. I do wonder if Texas considers moving him into the starting rotation. I love having a shutdown arm at the back end of the bullpen. That's hard to find in college baseball, and that's exactly what Dylan Volantis is. So I'm perfectly cool with him, being the next Houston Street, like all-time great closer at Texas. But, starting pitchers make more money in Major League Baseball. You see a lot of relievers try to make that transition into the rotation because, again, that's where the money is. That's where those big contracts are. So I don't know what the plan is. I haven't heard anything about that. But either way, Texas has something special with Dylan Volantis. And, again, we get him for 2 more years. So congrats on another honor for the Praying Mantis. How about a couple of transfer portal additions? Yeah, a couple more transfer portal additions to talk about. Texas has added another pitcher. Left-hander Hayden LeFew is coming in from Wake Forest. He committed, I believe, yesterday. 4-1 with a 4.46 ERA. How about these strikeout numbers? 59 of them and only 34 1/3 innings pitched in 2025. I'll do the math for you. Well, somebody else did it. I stole it from an article. 15.5 strikeouts per 9 innings. That is insane stuff from Hayden LeFew. He's got a fastball that regularly hits 94, 95, but can touch 97. He has an elite changeup. That's his strikeout pitch. Look, Wake Forest, an ACC school, they made the tournament this year. Like, you're able to have those strikeout numbers in that conference. That should translate over pretty well to the SEC. LeFew, going into his 3rd year of college baseball, has been more of a bullpen guy in his first 2 years of his college career, but the 14th ranked player in the portal. Not 14th ranked left-handed pitcher, not pitcher. 14th ranked overall player in the transfer portal is coming to Texas. That's another big-time add for Max Weiner and this pitching staff. And also, Texas added a JUCO catcher. We talked about Carson Tinney, the Notre Dame catcher, transferring in. We talked about him earlier in the week. After Carson Tinney came in, Texas backup catcher Cole Chamberlain hit the portal. So he's also leaving, which created a void for Texas at backup catcher. The Longhorns go and get Andrew Ermis from Temple College. Again, the JUCO ranks. A San Antonio kid, played his high school ball at Reagan down in the 210. Spent 2 years in JUCO, hit .338 with an OPS of nearly 1,100 this past season. 10 home runs and 41 RBIs for the Temple College Leopards. Not a lot of Leopards in college sports, but from Leopard to Longhorn, Andrew Ermis coming in. Really good defender. Didn't have a single error in 2025. Again, I don't expect him to be the starter, but you need two good catchers. Rylan Galvan was amazing this year. Amazing. One of the best catchers in college baseball. I was amazed that he was able to stay as productive and durable as he was, because I thought he played too much. Not that I didn't want him in the lineup every day because he's so good, but like, you want your catcher. That's a physically demanding position. You're playing in Austin when it's hot as hell in the spring and summertime. Sitting in that squad for 4 hours a day takes its toll on your body. I love when you've got a second catcher that you feel good about, to where you could give your starter either a full or a half day off. I think Schloss and company making that more of a priority for 2026. So this roster's coming together for next year. Texas loses a lot from 2025. But Schloss and company are ensuring that there won't be much of a drop-off. Hell, we're hoping next year is even better. And by my count, that is now 10 portal additions for the Longhorns so far this offseason. The portal window closes at the start of July, so we'll see if Texas adds any more. Of course, we'll see if anybody else enters the portal from Texas over these next few days. But it's been a pretty good run for Texas, adding some supreme talent, both on the mound and at the plate this offseason. By the way, real quick, we mentioned that Dylan Volantis was a first-team All-American for D1 baseball. Caleb Freeman, one of those transfers, the infielder coming in from Georgia State, he was also named a first-team All-American for D1 baseball. So about two of those guys on Texas's roster in 2026. And the aforementioned Carson Tinney was a third-team All-American at catcher for the Fighting Irish this year, but for D1 baseball's team. So, yeah, Texas, the talent is coming, man. It's what happens when you win the SEC in year one. The buy-in is there, and Texas baseball isn't going anywhere. They're going to be a factor in this conference. They're going to be a factor in the country for years to come, the way things should be. All right. That's going to do it for today's show. That's going to do it for this week's worth of shows. If you've made it this far, number one, thank you. Number two, please remember to like. Please remember to comment, rate 5 stars if you're listening via podcast. Leave a comment. I might have already said that. Subscribe to the channel. Share all of those great things. Y'all know the drill. You don't need me to tell you every day. Really do appreciate you guys making Locked On Longhorns a part of your day. For your next listen, check out the Locked On Portal Show. Brian Smith has the latest rumors, portal entries, portal signings. He's talking recruiting all of the time, so you can be the most informed fan with everything going on in college football. Find the portal on YouTube or wherever you listen to your podcast. Hope everyone has a great weekend. Plenty of recruiting news that we will talk about. A lot of Texas targets committing this weekend. We'll recap all of it on Monday. And I'm sure there's something else that we'll talk about. Never a dull moment on the 40 acres. We got you covered here every single weekday. That's going to do it for today. Until next time, horns up, mics off. We'll see y'all soon. This is Locked On Longhorns.